Hello everyone, welcome back to D Squared Stories, an audio fiction podcast bringing you short serialized weekly stories. We're on our last chapter of Canaveral Academy for Challenged Youth. This project has existed in scraps in my mind even before I wrote Latocracy at the beginning of all of this podcasting, so it's been exciting to bring it to life after all this time. I hope you've enjoyed this one, and stick around until the end for a little update on what's to come. Without any further ado, let's get started. Last time, Mary's fate hung in the balance as she was imprisoned in the cage while Mr. Simon searched for more evidence to convict her. Many students, Judah, and even Francis, tried to convince Peter not to proceed with the execution. After Mr. Simon produced more flimsy and circumstantial evidence, pointing possibly towards Mary, Peter finally seemed to inexplicably accept that she would have to die. Sister Teresa, around the same time, said she no longer wished to be at Canaveral Academy and would be departing. Peter executed Mary himself, the two of them alone in his private quarters, with the axe that Mr. Simon had used to kill Jean. The mood was dreary across Canaveral for the next few days, and Mr. Simon seemed uneasy that Judah was to be brought onto the staff. On Javier's 18th birthday, Peter brought him into his office under the guise of letting him pray before sending him off, but instead, he executed the young man with the axe too, just as he had with every other student who graduated from Canaveral. Chapter 6. Promise Day. Peter arose the next morning. He looked himself in the mirror for a few moments before kneeling down to pray. He prayed for his will and God's to align today. He put on his clothes. He descended down the stairs to his office. The blood was cleaned up once again. He took pride in maintaining an orderly office, despite the various messy rituals he performed in there over the years. It was important to him that not a speck of blood be visible to any student who he disciplined in that office. He continued down the stairs and towards the assembly area where the students gathered. The cage stood empty for a while now. The students continued in their quiet misery and helplessness. Peter gave an address to them following morning prayer. Students, I know these past few weeks have been rough on all of us. It can be difficult to decipher why God allows such evil things to happen to those such as Mr. Jim, Mr. Thad, Miss Andrea, Miss Jamie, and all of us who have to bear witness to it. The students looked disengaged, but kept their attention focused on him. They knew better at this point what the consequences of appearing disinterested were. With the introduction of Mr. Simon, they knew not how much worse the punishments could be. Peter continued, As Jesus took up his cross and pursued pain and suffering for our salvation, so must we pick up ours and continue forward. Evil cannot triumph as long as those who stand up to it continue to stay strong in the face of adversity. He paused to flip his notes. Starting next week, we will have 2 new members of staff joining our team to make up for the loss of Miss Jamie and Miss Andrea. I am excited for all of you to meet them and get to know them. The 2 women he spoke of were 2 nurses at a psychiatric hospital who had been recently fired for beating and force-feeding patients sedatives. The hospital was not renowned for its good treatment of patients, but even among their peers, the duo had been considered particularly sadistic and abusive. Peter concluded his address and dismissed the students for the day. Judah, today, did elect to go to the gym to exercise. Peter smiled upon this, feeling that the pride and joy that was his student officer was starting to return to his old self. Months ago, on a warm summer night, the muggy Pennsylvania weather felt as if you could drink the air with its humidity. Old Johnny made his rounds, passing the cafeteria, flashing his flashlight in every which direction before moving on towards the perimeter. Old Johnny was a creature of habit. He had a solid methodology to his patrol, alternating between sweeping the inside of the campus, followed by the outside. He did this in a jagged pattern so that no student, regardless of how quick they were, would be able to escape the premise undetected. However, his rigidity and focus on the fence left him with a blind spot known by most of the students, which was that during his outer patrol, it was easy to sneak about the campus. Once he swept past the boys' dorm, they all knew it was only a matter of minutes before he would pass by the cafeteria and then head out to the fences. On this night, Judah took that cue and rose from his bed. He knew which of the floorboards creaked and carefully navigated through them and out the window that was left open in an attempt to circulate some air. He made his way to the utility room, the one that was oddly placed just outside of the cafeteria. He took a careful look on the ground, feeling for something, then pulled a bobby pin from the grass. He slid it under the doorway, after which the door opened. Mary welcomed him inside, a small candle being the only source of light in there. "Do you have more of it?" she asked him. He sighed. He pulled out some additional Polaroid film. I do. I need to see the proof now, though. Mary pulled a developed photo from her pocket. She showed Judah in the dim light of the candle the photos of Mr. Jim behaving inappropriately with Rachel. Judah studied the photo closely. He clutched it with a bit of anger. I can't believe this is going on under everyone's noses. The headmaster must be informed of this. Mary sighed. Judah, everyone knows about this. What will it take you to join us and finally break free of here? We have a real chance soon. We've come this far. He shook his head. They'll catch us. There's far too many of them. The headmaster must be informed of this. That is the only way it will be straightened up. She snatched the photo out of his hand. No, that will only set us back greatly. Then there needs to be some other way that justice is attained. Don't you agree? Back in present day, Judah curled his dumbbells, thinking back to that moment, thinking back to his wording. The headmaster oversaw his workout while reading carefully over his onboarding documentation for the new recruits. Judah heaved heavily and seemed to sweat a bit as he worked himself into exhaustion. Headmaster, may I go fetch some water from your office? He asked. Certainly, young Judah. There is a jug right behind my desk. Judah rose up the steps and went to the back of the headmaster's office. He stared at the axe mounted to the wall. He studied it closely. There was a chip in it. The chip was not there the last time he had studied the axe, immediately following the execution of Mary. Hey, Judah said. We had a deal. I gave you what you wanted, now give me what I wanted. Mary looked down and bit her lip, hoping that he might have forgotten the terms of this exchange. Seeing that he had not, she reached into her back pocket. She seemed to secretly clutch something in her hand. Judah's eyes seemed to widen. In their secret rendezvous in the library, in the days just before Mr. Simon's arrival, Mary handed something over to Judah. It was her sock. She looked embarrassed to be handing this over to him. He grabbed it out of her hand, and she put her palm to her face. And again, what is the point of me giving you the bobby pins in this way? She asked. He looked up at her defensively. It's not a weird thing or anything, he said. It would be very suspicious if I just had them. I expect every inch of this campus to be investigated going forward. You know I have an unsavory history. If he suspects for even a moment that I'm up to no good, this will all fall apart. But if he thinks I'm just falling into old, perverse habits... I don't want to hear any more. Fine. Judah studied the axe, and Peter seemed to continue poring over his documents down in the gym. Suddenly, there was a loud commotion upstairs. Peter shot up, but in his haste, his prosthetic leg bent slightly in a way that could not support his weight, and he made a heavy stumble to the ground. He felt an oppressive weight keep him down for quite a few minutes. For a moment, he thought he heard Judah scream. In a panic, he drew from strength buried deep within himself and managed to force himself back up to his feet. He hurried up the stairs, his legs still not quite firmly in place, and his other one struggling to support the additional weight on its aging knee. Despite it all, Peter managed to climb up the stairs at an impressive pace, and when he got up the stairs, he stared on in horror. Judah had a gash on his shoulder from what appeared to be the axe. More shockingly, though, in the center of the office, Mr. Simon was bleeding out. A fine and somewhat shallow cut to his throat had caused the blood to suffocate him as he lay on the floor. Judah trembled, axe in hand. Headmaster, I didn't mean to. He... Back in the time that Mary was in the cage, Mr. Simon frantically dug up any clues he could. He had turned over the female dorm about 100 times, trying to find anything. The camera, the poison, anything he could use to point towards them. He had changed his approach one day. In desperation, he started tearing through the male dorm. He had just about pulled out everything from every drawer when he pulled Mary's sock from Judah's drawer. He examined it. He pulled the bobby pins from inside it. He trembled slightly, realizing what this meant to him. The door creaked. He turned around and saw Judah. The young student officer, leaving lunch early to attend to his filing duties, saw the zealot holding the bobby pins. The two stood, staring at each other for moments. It appears the two of us are in a bit of a pickle, wouldn't you say? Mr. Simon asked. Judah said nothing in response. This would implicate you for several of the previous murders, though I suspect you were only a useful idiot, right? Judah continued to just stay there staring at him, frozen like a deer in headlights. Yes, we both need that to be true now, don't we? Peter stood in shock, staring at the scene before him. He felt his entire reality falling apart as he stared at Judah, his most prized pupil, holding a murder weapon over the body of his former comrade. Judah stepped back nervously. Without taking his eyes off him, Peter went over to the body of Mr. Simon. There was a paper that stuck out of his pocket. He carefully drew it. He stared. Written in red ink, in handwriting that was clearly Mr. Simon's and not Judah's, was written the word pride and abuser. The headmaster's hands shook, rattled again by the new revelation. Mr. Simon and Miss Jamie dragged Mary by the arm into the gym. Miss Jamie forced her onto one of the weight benches. She cackled and smirked devilishly. At long last, I finally get to beat you within an inch of your life, make you admit you're a godless harlot, and send you to hell. How should we get started, Mr. Simon? You're the one who's done interrogations before. Mr. Simon propped a weight bench against the door, blocking it off from anyone else being able to get inside. He whipped and turned his attention to Miss Jamie. He walked over towards her, staying completely silent. Miss Jamie looked a bit nervous from his stone-cold face as he got close to the two of them. Mr. Simon? She asked. Mr. Simon swiftly delivered a kick to Mary in the stomach, causing her to writhe in pain on the floor. Before Miss Jamie could process anything, he whipped a pair of scissors from his pocket and stabbed the teacher repeatedly with them. She screamed and tried to swat and grab at his hand, but he just restrained her and continued stabbing until the life had drained out of her. He then drew on her with her own blood. Mary got up and screamed. There was now pounding on the door outside. He turned to her. He stared with cold, murderous eyes as he approached her. She thought in this moment her life was over, but to her surprise, he randomly plunged the scissors into his own abdomen. He let out a muffled groan as he pulled them back out and restrained Mary. He whispered quietly in her ear, I don't care how slippery you are. I will make sure you face repercussions for what you've done. Peter crumpled the paper in his hand. He stared to look at Judah. Judah seemed to realize what the headmaster had in his hand. He gasped heavily and began to speak. He attacked me. I was grabbing water, and he jumped out of nowhere, pulling the axe and trying to slice me with it. In a panic, I managed to grab it out of his hands, but I accidentally slashed him through the neck. Peter stared down at his old friend, shaking his head at him. He always had to get his way exactly, he said. There was no line he was not willing to cross to see that his will was done. Back before Mr. Simon was originally fired for his murder, he sat in Peter's office and shook in his chair with wrath. We cannot let this stand. We cannot let this boy turn 18, he shouted. Peter did everything he could not to roll his eyes at the zealot. I do not understand you, he said. What about how things have gone trouble you? We have done all we could to reform Jean, and he has not bent. If this is part of God's divine providence, we must accept it. We will simply turn him over to the Creator via the axe, as we have done with every graduate before him. Mr. Simon slammed his fist into the desk. The message it sends to the other students. They do not know that all graduates of Canaveral are cut down by the axe. They will see it as a victory. We will never return this school to order. Peter just looked on at him with pity. My decision is final. Any other action would be rash and inadvisable. A few days prior to the present day, Mr. Simon had pulled Judah aside in between classes. He pushed him up against a wall by his shoulder and stared daggers at him. Boy, he said, I understand you have been offered a teaching position at this school when you graduate. Yes, sir. That is true. I think we both know after all you've done, you need to turn that position down. We would both have a pretty serious problem if you took it. Judah gulped. I'm sorry, but I think I'm going to accept it, Mr. Simon. I don't know where I would go after Canaveral. Mr. Simon chuckled a little. Don't be foolish, boy. You could go wherever you wanted. Why would you ever want to stay here? Judah stammered, slightly, trembling under the man's strength. You know I know, Mr. Simon said. How could I possibly let you live? Shortly after the murder of Mr. Thad, that very night, Judah was tossing in his bed. He thought he heard a creak for just a moment, but dismissed it. Suddenly, he had his mouth covered by a hand, and he nearly gasped, but it was muffled. Mary knelt at the foot of his bed, glaring at him. "What the hell have you done?" she whispered. She gently uncovered his mouth. "You said I could not go to the headmaster. Those people were hypocrites. They sinned against God and against us. I have taken care of them, so now we have nothing to worry about." She had to muster all her strength not to shout at him and wake up the entire dorm. "That was not the point of me giving that evidence to you. I was trying to show you that this place is damned beyond saving, to persuade you to finally join us." He stared vacantly at her. "And I saved it. Now, 2 less of them are here to torment us, and we can all proceed as things were and make it to graduation." Mary grabbed his mouth again and squeezed him, just trying to inflict pain on him in the quietest way possible. She grimaced. "Do you really believe anyone graduates here, Judah? Do you really believe anyone has witnessed these horrors and would not immediately go to the authorities? It's a lie. It's a sham. Everyone who is here is condemned to death. A letter to their parents saying they have unfortunately ran off." Judah scowled, face still stinging from the pain. "Then I will need you to prove that to me." "Then perhaps I will." Peter continued staring over his dead friend in his office. He pulled some cleaning supplies from a nearby cabinet and began to wipe the place from blood. He did this as if it was such a mundane task to him. He meticulously cleaned every spot that had splattered out, still all while the blood continued to pour out of Mr. Simon's neck. "God's will is an enigmatic thing, Judah," he said to him. "It can never be outrun, though." Judah approached him as he cleaned up the spill. Peter was so preoccupied with cleaning, he hardly noticed Judah raise the axe. He did, however, notice when his real leg was severed cleanly from his body. Peter did not scream. He did not wail or cry as he collapsed onto his hands. He twitched for a moment, trying to use his false leg to rise up, but it was no use. He stared at Judah. He felt so much shock that for this time his face was expressionless, and he was rendered silent. Judah just stared at him with disappointment. "I agree with you, headmaster," he said. "God's will does always catch up with the unjust." Peter's senses finally returned to him, and he stammered. "Judah! But how? But why?" Judah stepped over to the window and stared down at Canaveral's campus. He stared down at the autumn leaves that piled up on the ground. "I thought you and I were similar, headmaster," he said. "I actually strongly agree with your ideals of retributive justice. I think there is a need for a place like Canaveral Academy. However, you allowed an infection to fester here." Peter quietly attempted to crawl towards his desk, to grab scissors or a pen or anything to defend himself. "Your staff was a den of lust, gluttony, sloth, and envy." He chuckled for a moment. "That's the one I was going to use when I got to Miss Jamie. Her anger and rage was only a deep cover for her repressed jealousy and unresolved complex towards other women and girls." He stepped back towards Peter. Judah swept his arm across the desk, knocking everything off it and away from the headmaster. "Not that I would have expected a numbskull like Mr. Simon to understand that, though. Failing to attribute motive and cause correctly is what I imagine made him such an incompetent detective. It's what let a 17-year-old boy run circles around him." "Judah, you monster!" Judah kicked him in the head. "Shut up, you hypocrite," he said, pausing for a moment. "And then, even when he found out his culprit, and that he got the wrong person, he refused to go back and do anything about it. Maybe pride was right for him. Guess a broken clock is right twice a day." Judah turned to look at Peter, who just grasped at his face from the force of the kick. "I had become convinced these past few days that pride was what I would stamp on your forehead." Peter groaned. "Judah, why? I gave you everything. My trust. How could you do this to me?" "Your trust. Your trust!" Judah continued kicking him again and again and again, until the headmaster's face was bloody and bruised. "What about the trust of the students you have here? The parents who sent us here?" he asked. "You plan to kill every single one of us, from the moment we got here." He nearly choked on blood as he barely gurgled out a response. "Not you, Judah. Not you. You could have lived here with us." He kicked him again. "Is that supposed to mean anything to me? What about Mary? How does a man of God like yourself justify killing someone who is so innocent, so free of sin?" Peter continued spitting up too much blood and teeth to respond.
She even hated the way I took out my violence on them. She loathed my revenge. She stopped cooperating with me, providing me with evidence against them once she found out it wouldn't make me agree to run away.
Peter spit out more blood before saying, I didn't kill Mary. Judah's eyes flamed with rage.
You delusional psychopath! You are so convinced that everything you do is just because it's a part of God's will. You take no accountability for your own actions. Fine. If that is how you choose to be, then accept that this is part of God's will as well.
He slammed the axe down into Peter's neck. The headmaster's face went expressionless and cold only a few seconds after the blade cut clean. Judah's arms swelled, but did not tremble in the slightest. The axe may have had to have a few more goes if this were a couple months ago. However, Judah's exercise in the gym had yielded significant results. He sighed deeply and let the axe fall to the ground, holding it with just one hand.
It is not enough to be morally good, to follow the teachings of Christ. One must be strong enough to punish those who do not. That's what you used to say anyhow, wasn't it, headmaster?
He dragged the axe along the ground as he walked over towards Peter's desk. He pulled a string from under the desk, causing the bell alarm system to go off throughout the campus. He picked up the headmaster's radio, and it went onto the loudspeakers. He spoke into it.
Mr. Simon is dead. Headmaster Peter is dead. All students from Canaveral Academy are hereby dismissed from the school permanently.
He stared out the window. There was a moment of stillness that lasted throughout the campus for far longer than he would have expected it would. Then, without fail, the madness started. Students smashed the windows of the classroom they were in and jumped out of them. He saw in the distance Mr. Matthias running from a couple of boys who took the moment to give chase rather than escape. Judah made his way down the stairs to join the students who were charging for the main gate. He emerged with them. He raised the bloody axe and let out an aggressive cry as they charged towards the main gate. The gate was in sight, and with all of them, it would take little effort to force it open. Judah was dead set on reaching it, when suddenly he felt something pierce his shoulder. He staggered for a moment, losing his grip on the axe. He stumbled to the ground, vision blurry and muscles no longer strong enough to stand up. As he did everything he could to focus, he saw old Johnny holding the tranquilizer gun in his hand. He was the only thing between them and freedom, but he was fully stocked up on his darts. He waved the gun in front of himself, challenging anyone to make a false step and be the next to feel what it was like to be paralyzed.
You animals aren't getting out of here and costing me my life. I will not pay for what I have done. I will rip you brats and miscreants limb from limb before I admit defeat.
They stared down the old man for a few moments before hearing the sounds of chains in the distance. Mr. Bart, on a bicycle, collided directly into old Johnny and sent him flying to the ground before he could even see what was coming. The tall, large man ripped the gun from his hand, stomped the makeshift rifle in half, and then pinned him to the ground, restraining him. He turned to the students. "Get your butts out of here," he said. "And I'm sorry I didn't do any of this sooner." Mr. Bart looked mournful as he ushered the students on. In this moment of distraction, old Johnny flung his thumb into his eye, causing him to stagger. Old Johnny ran away, and Mr. Bart gave chase. The students all continued towards the main gate. All of them, except for Judah, who was nearly trampled over as he could not manage the strength to get up. The tranquilizer was diluted, old Johnny not being an expert in actually making it, but it was enough to keep Judah down. He felt his vision blur and his muscles fade in and out of feeling, as he lay there, completely helpless. After a while of thinking he might pass out and never wake up, Judah felt someone thrust him up and over their shoulder. He could hardly even crane his neck to see who it was, but it did not take long for them to reveal themselves. "Come on, dork," Francis said. "You can't go and free all of us and then not even make it out yourself." The morning twilight and falling leaves gave the campus an orange glow as Francis painstakingly carried him towards the front gate. Judah struggled to keep his eyes open as he felt himself being pulled closer and closer to the exit. "I can't believe I was going to kill you 2 months ago," Francis said. "I deserved to die 2 months ago. I think I still do," Judah said weakly. "Shut up, dork. You had no idea what they were doing in there. No one really knew for sure." "Mary did, and I let her die instead of me." Francis chuckled. "Come on. You might be smart, but Mary would have always outsmarted you. She was never going to let you die here. She was always better than all of us." Judah just fell silent. Francis stopped making any noise aside from grunting and heaving with each step he took as he carried Judah past the exit. They had finally passed through the gate, forced open by brute force by various students who had gotten there first. Francis let out a heavy groan as he started walking down the gravel road lined by trees. Who knows how long we're going to have to walk to get anywhere? It's been so long I don't even remember what the bus ride was like to get here. As he said this, he saw some sirens in the distance. Judah could not see them coming, but heard them as they approached. One car pulled over right in front of them. Francis laid Judah on his back in the grass before them as he got ready to talk to the officer and explain the situation. Judah could just barely see the officer get out of the car and walk over to Francis. His vision and consciousness threatened to turn everything into an orange blur as he saw it. He felt it all fade, just for a brief moment, a cold darkness consuming him. He thought just for a moment he felt someone shaking him. Drawing forth everything he had, he forced his eyes open for one last time. He thought that he must be more delirious than he originally thought from the tranquilizer. He thought that there must be something wrong, that he's not seeing everything right. He thought, for a moment, he saw Mary's face looking right at him, as if she was right in front of him. He wanted to say something to her. He wanted to tell her everything he was feeling right now. He wanted to ask her how she was still there. For now, though, his eyes closed once more, and he finally lay at peace. Outside the prison walls of the academy, its buildings that were both stained metaphorically and literally with blood, he and the others were free, launched from their platform and free to take off from the only world they knew. Thank you so much for listening to Canaveral Academy for Challenged Youth. If you enjoyed, please rate the podcast, give it a like on YouTube, or share with someone else you think might also enjoy. Next week, there's going to be at least a gap of 1 or 2 weeks without a chapter. I'm hoping to keep it shorter than the hiatus between Microorganic Mayhem and this series. Though, at the time of Microorganic Mayhem, I was convinced there would only be a week in between that series and this one. So we'll see what life has in store for me. Whenever I am back, there's going to be one quick, different thing. We're going to do a bit of a remix and analysis of one of my previous stories, Generative Artificial Stupidity, and it's going to be done with a very special guest. Some of you might already have an idea of what I mean by that, but for the rest of you, I'll leave it a surprise. After that, though, we're going to do what's probably looking like an 8-chapter series at this point that I'm tentatively calling Tea Dojo at Football State. It's a story incredibly loosely based on a real tea club I was in during college. It's a story about college students brewing tea and learning about the traditional Chinese tea ceremony, with the twist that it's in the style of a shonen battle manga/anime. If that frame of reference does nothing for you, but you're familiar with my work, it will be very much like I took fun facts and psychic possession attacks and ramped up the absurdity and stakes even further. I'm only a little way into actually writing it, but with the outline I currently have, I genuinely think it might be handily the greatest thing I ever write for this podcast. I can't wait for you to get to hear it. You can stay up to date with D-Squared Stories by following us on social media. That will be D-Squared Stories on just about any of the major platforms. Thanks again for listening, and I hope to have you listen again next time.